Let's see how we're doing today. Just gonna give it a couple of seconds, let some people jump in.
Welcome, welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining.
Hello, everybody. All right, we've got a little crowd in here, so let's get started. Hi, my name is Maribel Rivera. I am Vice President of Strategy and Client Engagement at ACEDS, and I am joined today by my monthly colleague, Jared Coseglia, founder and CEO of True Staffing Partners. Hello, Jared.
Hi, Maribel. Great to be with you today.
Great to be with you too. Um, this is one of my favorite webinars on a monthly basis because it's so different from everything else. We don't talk about a lot of other things like ESI protocols and generative AI for document review, but we really talk about people and what we're seeing in the market, which is what I love to talk about is how do we help people with their careers and where are they going? So, Jared, what do you got in store? Wait, before we get started, this is an interactive session. So we want your questions. We want your feedback. We want your comments. We want to hear what's going on. This is not just about me and Jared just having a conversation and Jared sharing uh, all the data that True Staffing grabs on a monthly, quarterly, annual basis, but really about all of you sharing feedback and comments and asking the questions, those burning questions you have about your next move in your career. So, Jared, what do you got for us?
Oh my gosh, we've got so much to talk about. It's really been an incredible last month. August was a really crazy month. Just a reminder, everybody, you can QR code scan our 2024 jobs report. This is the 2023 data, and I always think, like, I always keep mine handy, because sometimes I like to turn to it and reference it while we're going over these new numbers because they're
Yeah.
starting to look a lot different now than they did a year ago today. Thank goodness. But that gives you a nice historical, think of it like a history book that you want to keep with you professionally, and we'll put out another one next year. We've got five hottest jobs, and we've listed some jobs here that are going to seem like maybe like a little outside the box. And that's because we're getting a lot of requests from customers that want people to step into roles that have e-discovery experience that aren't exclusively e-discovery skill responsibilities, like the forensic technology manager, like information governance and records manager. We've got an entry-level role in Uniondale. If somebody lives in Long Island and wants to break into e-discovery and support a litigator doing as an entry clerk, they'd love somebody that wants to move in that direction. They'll groom them to move into the litigation support department. We don't see that very often, but you do have to go into an office 5 days a week.
So tell
Uh,
me why you think some of these roles actually fall into this, why they're looking for these people with e-discovery experience.
because they lean more heavily towards the technologically savvy. And they also have the ability to influence attorneys and have an impact other than just following orders and taking direction. Also, as they maturate, they have the ability to bill at a higher rate than other administrative support professionals because of their expertise. And so that's why some of these companies are specifically looking for people with an e-discovery background. Yeah.
And the two that do stand out, right? You said the data entry clerk, definitely, because that is an entry level position, which is
Correct.
interesting to have e-discovery uh, skills or to start off in e-discovery. But the information governance and records manager one is interesting to me as well. That
Yeah,
one
well,
stands
they
out.
want more on the InfoGov side than they probably want on the records management side. And InfoGov from the perspective of not only organizing information for the firm, but being able to advise on information governance, best practices, policies, procedures for corporate customers, probably through the uh, channels of the partners and attorneys. But that's unique, and also strong leadership. This is something where they want someone that knows how to manage a team and scale a team, and what we've
Mhm.
seen a lot in the AM law is information records management often is inherited teams that haven't necessarily grown, and they aren't necessarily the size of some of the e-discovery teams. So having that sort of background is also really attractive to that particular customer.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. And look, if somebody's, working on their SED cert or has their SED cert, but has never had the opportunity to apply it, that job in Uniondale has probably got your name on it. All
I
right.
like it.
Let's talk about our trends because they are wildly starting to swing in a different direction. So we did an analysis and we saw that every ESI job seeker who accepted a position in August through True had a minimum of two offers, right? That's the first month this year where everybody who accepted a job had options, right? They didn't just have a bird in the hand, they had two in the bush. So what does that mean? That means there's more jobs out there. It also means that people are not necessarily going to win talent just by being the first offer that they get. They're going to look to see, do I have other things going on? They may not be so willing to take the first offer they receive, is what we're finding, because they feel like they might get a better offer somewhere else if they can hold on and be patient a little bit. The other thing to consider here is they're going to start now leveraging one offer against the other, as opposed to not having any other offers, which is a very different position for job seekers to be in than they were a year ago today.
Right.
We also received more new job orders in the last 2 weeks of August than we did in all of June and July and August. And I promise you, we did not take the months of June and July and the first half of August off. The market exploded in the back half of August. We actually didn't think it would happen until September. And that momentum has continued. As I was telling Maribel when we were preparing for this call, the volume of job orders we're receiving on a daily basis is almost quintupled over the last 3 weeks. And part of that is because clients are coming to us saying, somebody resigned and I got to backfill them. And it used to be 9 months ago, 12 months ago, if somebody resigned, maybe they weren't going to backfill them right away. Companies were beginning to move towards running lean. Well, everyone is running lean, whether you're a law firm, vendor, software company, or corporate. Nobody has enough people on staff. Everybody's at a point where if you lose someone, you now have to replace them. And we're seeing that play out in the marketplace. And what's good about that in some ways is one person leaves, another person comes in, and it's a musical chairs, right?
Right.
The good news is we're adding chairs in addition to people changing them too for the first time in a while, right? We're seeing add to staff versus replacement at about a 50-50 ratio, which is really healthy. So this is a good time to be considering making a move. We've been telling everybody for 9 months that things were going to improve at the end of the year, and we're seeing it happen now. A little bit about salaries. Vendors are generally capping their PMs at 125. Been pretty
Okay.
standard, and their senior PMs are capping at 150. Why is this important? Well, because law firms for senior PMs are paying a lot more. Law firm senior PMs are more in the 150 to 200 range. Sometimes those are non-exempt positions, so you get paid OT too. But a lot of law firms are trying to find PMs in the same range now of the vendors, in that like 1 to 150 range or 1 to 125. Here's what's challenging. If you're a vendor and you're offering the same salary as a law firm, and that law firm's offering the same salary, and they're both exempt, apples to apples, maybe the law firm's benefits are a little better than the vendor's, maybe, but the vendor's job is almost always fully remote.
Right.
And the law firm job is almost always hybrid. And what we're seeing here is less than 5% of law firms that are looking for add to staff will actually allow fully remote new hires. And that's for direct hires, not for contractors. And only about 5% of the vendors that hire direct are requiring in office. So they're polar opposites. And
Right.
what law firms are sort of surprised at in this economy is that someone's going to take a job at a vendor for the same money that they get at a law firm because they are going to be fully remote versus having to commute. And that is absolutely the case. So if
Yeah.
you're a law firm and you're looking for PMs in that 1 to 150, know that you're up against the vendors who are paying the same amount of money now. They didn't used to pay the same amount of money, but because of inflation and things that have happened over the last few years, particularly as we'll see in 2022, where salaries spiked as a result of post-COVID mania, we're now seeing that it's not competitive for a law firm to look for a PM at the same rate as a vendor if they're offering the same amount of money but are making people come into an office. The candidates see it as a cut because
Yeah.
it costs money and time and effort and energy to get into an office 2 to 3 days a week.
Interesting. Okay.
The other thing that's not great news, but starting to improve, is that increases in base salary at the point of hire are at the lowest they've been in 4 years. And what does that mean? And we'll show you on the next slide exactly what that means. It essentially means that if you change jobs now versus if you change jobs in 2022, you're probably not going to get as aggressive of an increase from where you're at to where you're going as you might have gotten in 2022. Now, I think as we move into Q4 and definitely into 2025, because it's been such a difficult job market for so long. We're coming on 24 months now from when
Yes.
the NASDAQ crashed in October of 22 and Zuckerberg fired 10,000 people at Meta and everybody else followed suit. And we all thought we were going to have a hard landing recession, which hasn't happened yet. We're at 2 years now. That levee is now going to break. And unfortunately, because employers have been so purse string tight, I feel like the pendulum is going to swing aggressively in the other direction because all of a sudden people are going to lose staff. We're seeing it happen now. I mean, we got 3 job orders this morning of customers saying somebody quit this morning. Let's go. I need resumes right away. That's going to make them willing to pay more money in order to get the people that are right, in order to get the people that can plug in and do the job. And they're going to start moving faster. As they move faster, that's going to create more jobs at a higher tempo. This is going to change, but this is what it is for now.
And we're going to see that going into 2025 as well, right?
Correct. We're already seeing it happen. I think what we're going to see is the momentum building in Q4 with probably a crescendo happening at the end of Q1. The time to maximize your earning potential for compensation and e-discovery on a job move is probably in the next 3 to 9 months.
Excellent. We do have a question.
Yeah.
We had a question about, let's see, what other than SEDS, what other types of certifications do you see being required for lit specialists, e-discovery type positions? And I know a few people dropped the reveal certification in there, but again, that's technology focused. So let's talk about certifications or other skills for
Um,
the roles that you're seeing.
Look, the e-discovery world sort of breaks down into vocational and educational certifications. There aren't a lot of other educational certifications other than CEDS, right? Maybe you start with your EDEX and then you move up and get your CEDS.
Right.
That's a good strategy, particularly if you're entry level and you're breaking in for the first time. But if you're on the technology side, the vocation, it's relativity, it's reveal, it's Everlaw, it's Disco, it's
It's
all the
all of
other,
them.
yeah, it's all of them. I mean, that's what you want to go get. I think what you have to look at is where do you want to go work and what are the tools that they're using. It's pretty
Yes.
easy to find this out, right? You go look at other employees that are working at the places that you want to work. You see what kind of tools they're using or advertise that they're using in their current position. And if that's where you want to work, then that's what you need to learn. There's obviously a lot of demand for relativity. There's an increasing amount of demand for reveal. There's a good amount of demand for disco. I would say those are the three kind of main vocational technology tools that employers come to us and say, show me somebody who knows how to wield this.
Right. Let's see. I think that is the only question so far. So let's
Great.
keep moving.
So speed of hire for executives is really slow, guys. The employers are taking a really long time to make decisions. We're filling jobs we started working on in February and March, finally. But it is a slow roll for executives. I think the executive marketplace in e-discovery is going to take a little bit longer to catch up to the mid-market, the upper mid-market, and even the early career market. There's not a lot out there, and they're not willing to pay much more money to get that talent.
And there's not a lot of movement at that executive level either. I'm gonna
No.
assume most people at a law firm you want to stay. Uh,
I mean, look, not that you want to stay, but if you're going to go somewhere else, what are you looking for? And when an
right,
opportunity comes up, if you're looking, you better jump on it, right? Don't wait around for three more things to look at and feel like you've explored the market. That you don't have that luxury. There's a job that's right for you, and you think it could be more lucrative or a better quality of life or more challenging or whatever's motivating you to look. Don't hesitate because there's not a lot of jobs out there if you're making north of 250 in the marketplace right now.
right.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay.
In e-discovery, direct hire FTE has surpassed contract staffing at a ratio of 75 to 25, which is very unusual and speaks to a marketplace that is not that is probably putting a lot of the work on their existing staff rather than additional contractors to alleviate the burden, which is why also we see pretty consistently that burnout is the number one reason why people are looking for jobs because they're working too much, their quality of life is deteriorated. This is indicative of that. When contract staffing sorts to meet the equilibrium of FTE, that tells us that employers are giving people the support they need to have a balance, just as the balance of 50 contractor to FTE. I mean, it's literally balance.
Right.
It's very imbalanced right now. And what we're going to see are people giving notice and having to be replaced because there aren't contract augmentations there to pick up the slack or other people to push the work onto without adding more staff, without breaking two or three more people on your team.
And are they just moving? Are people, you mentioned earlier that people are giving notice, and I'm going to assume some of that is from just burnout as
Yeah,
well as new opportunities and other things. And so do you think we're going to continue to see, especially now that we're at the end of coming into the end of the year, we know how crazy litigation gets, and courts like to shut down for a little while during the holidays. So I'm going to assume we'll start to see a lot more of this.
100%.
Okay.
We always guide and advise that people not quit a job until they've got another one locked in if they're gainfully employed. It's always better to be looking for a job from a place of employment. If you're not, I don't think it hurts you. I mean, we have plenty of people who are unemployed that are still getting 2 offers at the point of hire. So it's not that employed people are doing better or worse than unemployed people. In fact, the last point we want to make is the best way to secure a fully remote position is by being a contractor. And we've had people leave full-time jobs to take contracts because they want to be fully remote. We've had people leave full-time jobs and say, can you give me some contract work to hold me over until the market improves? And I'll work 25, 30 hours. That's all I need to get by because I'm not happy where I'm working and I'm not going to take a job in a full-time capacity for
Yeah.
$15,000 less because I'll leave it in 6 to 12 months when the market rebounds. So what can you do for me in terms of contract? And then I can work remotely from home. We hear that pretty regularly and can facilitate that pretty regularly for people. So there's a lot of thoughtfulness to a job seeker's strategy about how to get the things they're looking for. It's not just, hey, let me just start applying online to things that look like are in my salary range or that I'm qualified for. There's a lot of other roads to take to get to Valhalla. So
Right.
know your options, right? Because there are lots of options out there, particularly right now.
Yes. So we have 2 questions.
Great.
Um, and this is a good one. Is there any data on hiring for e-discovery roles in-house?
Yeah, so we don't have a slide on it, but I can tell you that less than 5% of jobs in e-discovery ecosystem are in corporate America. About 35 to 40% are law firms, and the other, 55, 65, 60% are vendor. That's been pretty consistent. I'd say the pendulum has sort of swinged almost to being, 50-50 law firm versus vendor over the course of 2024. We'll add all that up at the end of the year and see where we're at. The vendors have been very slow to hire this year, more so than I've ever seen in years and years and years. And the law firm's quite the opposite. They've been trying to hire really aggressively, but also trying to get people to come back to the office, which has been challenging for them, which is extending the timeline to hire, which is slowing the rate of the marketplace and the amount of new jobs that can kick up and turn up because people aren't changing them as frequently. That's starting to change. Seeing salaries sort of tick up a little bit. We're seeing people make strategic choices like leave full time to go to contract to get remote. But if you're looking to go in-house corporate, there are very few opportunities out there, very few.
Yeah.
And the ones that are full-time are almost always requiring you to go into an office. So if you're looking for a corporate in-house position, you really need to live where that corporation is, right? You're going to need to be in Jersey for Novartis. You're going to need to be in New York for all the banks. You're going to need to
Yeah.
be in California for big tech. You're going to need to be in Houston for big oil, that kind of thing. But for contract, they got a lot more flexibility. So most of the people we place at corporate are contract because they don't have the budget for full-time headcount, the same way that law firms and vendors do, but they're remote. But they are few and far between, and they tend to be very experienced talent, almost like consultants. And we do a lot of that work that would normally go to a big four consulting firm, and instead they're hiring contractors from us for a
Yeah.
variety of reasons. Yeah.
Interesting. Other question is there any trend in contract jobs not being sought after by candidates would rather be full-time employees or truly just not as many being posted?
Yeah, there's just not as many being posted, right? And when you see that 50-50 equilibrium, it's because there's so much pressure on the existing employees that they need support or you're going to lose your existing employees. That's usually when we see the pendulum swing to an aggressive contract market. And right now, people are not willing to spend that money. And most of them are trying to make that happen in a full-time capacity because they feel like they want to own that talent. A lot of it also sometimes depends on the nature of the litigation that they're in. Sometimes they can't have contractors access certain data that full-time employees can. And so that can also dictate it, particularly for law firms, less so for vendors. But we used to do most of our contract staffing in the vendor space. Now
Yeah.
most of it is in the law firm and corporate space because the vendors are running so lean because either they're trying to sell and flip their organization or get to an EBITDA where they can, or they're simply not having the same success that they had in 2022 and maybe 2023.
Awesome. Another question in the chat for us. I'm trying to break into the e-discovery field, and I think you're going to love this one because I think I can point them to one of your new services. I'm trying to break into the e-discovery field, but I'm having trouble gaining any traction. My background was as a solutions engineer, where I used SQL and Python extensively and managed complex data projects. I'm certified as an eDiscovery exec and a Relativity One certified pro and have worked on self-teaching various eDisco tools. Can you share any tips for me to stand out or suggest any projects to showcase my skills? And I'm going to assume one, contract management, two, the true staffing professional services can help right there. What else can we do?
Yeah, I mean, hearing all that, you've done a lot of the good work. You need evangelism, either self-evangelism by going to events, being visible, creating a network, creating a community, joining, a community, making yourself visible. That's both online and in person. And you need advocacy, right? You need an agent, somebody who's looking out for you and making introductions and helping introduce you to people and maybe not getting you a job, but getting you some visibility that leads you to somebody who's going to take a risk and give you a job. Or you might need to take a look at an opportunity that isn't exactly what you think you want to be doing, but it
Yeah.
gets you in the door, like this no fault data entry clerk that we've got in Uniondale. It gets you in the door to then say, here's what else I can do. Here's how I can showcase myself. Right. That's the other thing to consider. A lot of people are taking jobs that are not what they want, but they know it'll help them get to what they want. Sometimes you have
Yes.
to take a step back to take two steps forward.
I love that advice. And I would say also a lot of the vendors, right? We've got quite a few vendors in the industry that are hiring, looking for that talent that they can upskill as well.
Yeah, sort of. Look,
Okay.
I think if you're at that level of entry level and you're going to work for a vendor, you should find a vendor that's local to you and be willing to go into an office 5 days a week and shadow somebody and be visible because I think a lot of vendors hesitate to hire entry or early career talent that isn't going to be sitting next to them because they A, don't feel like they can train them appropriately virtually, and B, want the accountability of proximity. So and we see a lot of people that are trying to break in that won't budge on that. And we tell them, when you're ready to budge, let me know and I can help you. But everybody draws a line as to what they're willing to sacrifice in order to get something they want in a different location. Yeah.
Okay. Excellent. All right. We've got 8 more minutes.
All right, I'm going to rip
What,
through this data. So
there
here's
we
the
go.
here's the here's the 2022 numbers, right? So if you had between 4 and let's call it 10 years experience, the average increase you got when you moved jobs in 2022 is between 30 and 40%. So someone at 120 is making 165, someone at 80 is making 110. Those are the good years. People got big bumps. Now let's look at the 2024 numbers. It's very different. Very different. The average increase is now at 9% across the board, regardless if you're exec or early career, mid career, anything in between. People are not getting huge increases in salaries right now. They're starting to tick up a little bit. But as we said, the best time to move jobs is probably going to be in the next 3 to 6 months because as chaos ensues with people giving notice and not having the resources, people are going to be willing to spend more money to get the people they want. So particularly for that, we'll call it 3 to 8 years experience. That's going to be the sweet spot for a lot of jobs over the next 3 months in particular, probably less so at 10 years plus and probably less so at less than 2 years. Speed of hire for executives, it's so slow. Employers are taking a really long time to make decisions. A lot of them just took the summer off on making decisions. For mid-market non-contract professionals, I'm sorry, for sales professionals, things are moving faster because employers are realizing anybody I hire now might still have an impact at the beginning of next year, as opposed to me hiring at the end of the year and them not having an impact until Q2 or Q3 of 2025. So we're seeing that people want to hire salespeople now. That'll slow down as we get to November, December. Mid-market to take a little longer. People are being a little choosier, but I'm telling you, when we revisit each other next month, that number is going to drop down to like 40. I think it's going to be a completely different report in when we look at September's numbers because the last 2 weeks of August and September have been so busy, and we've been placing multiple people a day in September. There's a lot more activity happening. And then finally, contract is a little slower, 12 days, probably also because the demand is not as extreme. So there are a lot more options. So now is a great time if you're an employer to hire and look at contract talent because the demand for it is not as extreme as the demand for full-time talent, which we'll show you in a second. So good time to look at contractors, right?
Yeah.
You don't have to rush as much to make decisions on contractors in a couple of days after meeting them the same way you did back in Q4 of 2022, where you essentially had a week, you had 7 days to make a decision or they were gone, right? You got some more options now. There's more talent available.
Excellent. All right.
Offer acceptance likelihood, and I'm glad we got to this, and because it's going to look so different than privacy. So here you see in e-discovery, you've only got a 55% chance that if you're an employer and you extend an offer to a candidate and it's the first offer they receive, that they will say yes. And these numbers are pretty low, right? You got a 50-50 chance as of Q2. I put all this up here because I want to show our privacy data. Show the next slide. This is what the privacy job market looks like. It's completely different. You've got a 3 in 4 chance of a candidate saying yes in data privacy if they're the first offer that they receive from a job seeker. Why? Because all the jobs in privacy are in corporate America. They're cost centers. They're not billable resources for the most part. And software companies, service providers, and law firms have not hired as aggressively where they are billable in privacy as they have in e-discovery. Whereas I just said to that question that was asked, 90%, 95% of the jobs are billable jobs at vendors, software companies, and law firms in e-discovery. So go back a slide. You could see what this tells us is go back one. Yeah. What this tells us is, unlike privacy and e-discovery, being fast is not the only factor. That's
Right.
not going to give you competitive advantage in the market right now. You still need to be fast, but you need to do other things too, like have the right compensation, have the right titling, have the right reporting structure, have the right growth plan, because those are the things that are have a better quality of life. You're not going to walk from a burnout situation into another burnout
No.
situation. Those are the things e-discovery job seekers are most concerned about, not securing the first job that they receive. Whereas privacy professionals, generally speaking, are grabbing the first job they receive. So the guidance I give my hiring manager in privacy is, if you like somebody, you better make them an offer, because if you don't and someone else does, they're probably going to take that other offer. They're not going to wait, right?
Right.
They're assuming that person really wants them and they're going to go for it, and that feels right and good to them, to 75% of that community. Here, not as much. So it's a really different job market in terms of the behavior of speed of hire and how that relates to whether someone is likely to accept your offer.
So in e-discovery, right, or ESI roles, we're seeing more of a candidate market.
I wouldn't say that.
Okay.
We're moving towards that. And it's been
Okay.
a slow roll towards that. We're moving towards that. What we're seeing in e-discovery is that the candidates now have options where they didn't have as many options back in Q1 through 3 of 2023, where if you were first, you had an 80% likelihood of getting a yes. That dropped to 65, then to 50, now to 55 because the summer was slow, but that's still so much less than in privacy.
Right.
So it has to be things other than speed. Speed will not immediately give you competitive advantage here. It may hurt you by not having it, but if you're the fastest and you're the first, but you're the lowest offer, they're going to wait for that second one, right? Being fast with a low ball offer is not ensuring success. In
Right.
privacy, I might say the opposite. I might say, hey, listen, if you get this candidate the offer first and fast, they're going to take it because they want out, right? E-discovery people are used to burnout. Privacy people are not used to burnout. And that is what's driving their market too. And let me tell you something. If they think they can get away from burnout and find a higher quality of life at another corporation, and they're moving mostly from corp to corp, as opposed to law firm to vendor, vendor to law firm, or law firm to law firm, vendor to vendor, they're going to take it. They're going to look at speed as being very important. I know we're about to run out of time, so I want to very quickly go over our direct hire metric. We sort of
Yeah.
echoed this already, so not much to cover here. What is interesting is this next slide, which is remote versus in office. And what you can see here is, the stats have gone down to only 20% of the hybrid slash remote jobs being fully remote. And this again is a result of more law firm hiring compared relative to vendor hiring historically, and also less contract hiring, because most people that are fully remote are either at a vendor or are contract or both.
Right.
And as those hires decrease, so does the volume of fully remote positions. I don't think we're going back to a world where everyone's going to an office 5 days a week. And as I was even saying to Maribel before this call, some of our law firm customers are even dropping standards from 3 days a week to 5 days a month, or 3 days a week to 2 days a week, or 3 days a week to 1 day a week. And those things do really change the pool of candidates that an employer can look at based on how many days in an office. And that has also made the fully remote go down, because the hybrid, the requirement in hybrid has gone down, just not out.
It's that flexibility that people are looking for as part
Correct.
of the culture that they work in. Um, Awesome. Any last thoughts on the slide? And we have one question. I know we're at time, but we have one last
Yeah,
question.
we've got time. If people want to stick around and ask questions, we're here for you.
Awesome. All right. Last question is I worked in e-discovery for almost 10 years, many years ago, and then left the industry. It's been over 10 years now, and I'm seriously considering trying to break back into e-discovery. The landscape has changed drastically. I'm not getting younger. Besides the said cert, what other things can I do to reintroduce myself into the market without breaking the bank and all kinds of certs on all kinds of certs in education? And you did mention some of that towards the other question that we had. So you mentioned, being visible. Basically, you have to brand yourself, right? Have advocates. So any thoughts on that for someone coming back into the market?
Yeah,
Welcome back.
I guess what I would say to this person who sounds like they had some strong experience in the past, it's not just about marketing yourself, it's about marketing what your greatest strengths and skill sets and impact skills are, right? So if you haven't touched e-discovery technology in 10 years, that's not going to be your value proposition. You don't want to go looking for jobs where they're looking for a plug and play, relativity, reveal, disco, whatever person who can immediately, pilot those technologies. If your value strength is, being a great uniter of people, influencing attorneys, how do you start positioning yourself for that? And how do you look for positions that will help you find an employer that will value that over
Right.
something that you don't have? And that may mean looking at, employers that are smaller or really big. It may mean saying, hey, I thought I wanted a job where I could be a PM and own a case and do everything, but I just need to go back and like start processing data for a little bit. And I'm willing to do it for less money to break back into the business. I don't, this person didn't talk about money, but I'll tell you from my experience, the biggest challenge we have with people that were in it and left and want to get back is not that they don't have the skills, but it's that the skills that they don't have do not align with the salary expectations that they do have. And they want to be paid what they were paid or paid what they were making in a different discipline. And this is very unrealistic, right? So if you've been out and you got to break back in, you might have to seriously consider taking a significant step back in comp in order to eventually get back to where you were. Most people I find that leave eDiscovery come back because they want to make the money that they were making in eDiscovery, or they like the high pace of it. And those two things kind of tend to go together, high pace and compensation.
Yes, I would agree. Well, Jared, any last minute words? I think that was our last question. Anything else that you want to share?
I don't watch the chat and the Q&A when we're engaged here. So, QR code me, LinkedIn with me, connect with me. I'll connect you with the right people on my staff who I will curate and guide to give you guidance and wisdom and help you with all of your search efforts. And thank you as always for joining us and for having me, Maribel.
Of course. And I will say Jared and I will be at Relativity Fest in Chicago in two
Yes.
weeks. So if you are there, we are talking about building e-discovery teams, basically. So if you're going to be at Relativity Fest, please stop by our session. It is on Wednesday afternoon at 3:30, day one of RelFest. ACEDS has a booth at Relativity Fest, so please come by, join us there, or feel free to reach out to me and Jared to meet us in Chicago. I'm sharing in the chat our upcoming events. Jared and I and Mike Quarter, our ACEDS president, we meet every month for ION ESI. If you think this is great for you, please feel free to also invite other people. We want to hear your feedback. We want to hear your comments. We want to know what questions you want us to answer for you. So feel free to send those ahead of time. And Jared mentioned earlier to build your networks. ACEDS has 30 chapters around the globe. Please feel free to join them or follow any of them online. They all have online events that they do, so that some of them even do monthly coffee chats just to build networks. So please feel free to join them and really build your networks as well. So thank you again. We'll see you next month. Jared, I'll see you in Chicago.
Can't wait.